Hi, this is Marcus Fairs, founder and editor-in-chief of Dezeen, and welcome to Dezeen Club's inaugural metaverse meetup. This is the first time we've held an event in the metaverse, and we're going to be discussing what the metaverse is with a bunch of incredible speakers who are all at the cutting edge of virtual reality and digital worlds. Could you all briefly introduce yourself? Andrés, you go first. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm Andrés Reisinger. I'm an artist and creator. I have started a lot of years ago studying graphic design, but then I dropped out because I thought it was a little bit repeated into my way of knowledge and that stuff. But yeah, I started creating stuff in 3D and CGIs and that stuff. That's what I really like to do.
Great, thank you very much. And Space Popular, explain a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Lara.
Yeah, hi everyone. And I'm Fredrik, and together we're Space Popular. We're architects, and with Space Popular we do everything from buildings, interiors, but increasingly over the last, let's say, 6-7 years, focusing a lot on the question of virtual architecture, and currently building a whole bunch of different virtual spaces for different purposes. Great to be here, everyone.
Yeah, great research, this event.
And finally, Amber, just introduce yourself quickly, Amber. Can you hear me, Amber? I can't hear us. Never mind. And Charlotte Taylor's here as well, but she's going to stay in the audience and we're going to do a presentation on her behalf in a second. Andrés, do you want to just share your presentation and show us a little bit about the work that you do?
Yeah, of course. Well, I will be very brief. I run Reisinger Studio as a kind of response of that I need more creative minds and more inputs and outputs that I can't do myself on my own. So I created a studio that it's a team of people that works with me, and we work together to create unique things. You might know me because of the Hortensia chair that was very reposted on socials. It's a chair that's inspired by abstract flowering or something like that. I was trying to work out a kind of texture that reminds you of a flower, but it's in an abstract way. Instead of using real shapes of flowers or text or paintings of flowers or that stuff. So here you can see that we designed the Hortensia fully in 3D in CGI. We are not the most technician team in the market, but we will like to use our limitations as our strength. So we started creating this chair as a kind of a manifesto of how could be built in physical, in real life. So we started with this little module. Then we replicated a lot to create this kind of patterns. This is all CGI. And with this kind of pattern simulation, we started to think about how much of these modules we will need and how they will react in between each other. So here you can see how we can upholster it on the surface of Hortensia and simulate it. Well, and here you can see how it looks at the end, or well, in the process. So, and this is the real one. This is not a render. This is the first one the prototype that we have now in our studio. So my work is all about transportation. It leads you from one reality to another. So you can see that in a lot of my work, I work with like metaphysic paintings or kind of trying to twist the reality in a kind of subtle way at a point, but always trying to be very realistic on how it looks and trying to be trying to respect some laws of the world that we know. So it's not so big the step in between my work and the people that will see it, will experience it. This is my latest exhibition called the Shipping. It was a collection that was that composed by many different digital furnitures. Some of them were only digital, and some of them have later physical entity. But I was trying to create with this very manifesto and be clear about what it's really important about an art piece. Not a design in mass production, but in an art piece, what for me it's very important is the ownership of it. So in this collection that was in a public auction, the digital furniture went for higher prices than the physical. And for me that was already a success. It was think of. So thank you. I think it's too much.
No, it was great. Thank you, Andrés. So you mentioned then that the digital versions of your works sold for more money or were more expensive than the physical ones. What does that tell us, do you think, about the rise of the digital platform as a place to hang out and to work, but also to do business?
Yeah, of course. Imagine that we are using. Well, in my case, I have been one of those kids with computers since I have memory. So for me, it's like it's the common thing. You know, it's like a daily thing. I use technology. I use digital softwares to create my pieces and my designs, and I studied in the university using digital tools. So it's very I don't know how to say it, but it's very organic to be selling artworks or creating more business through digital space. We have a lot of experience doing digital, so why we have to create physical objects in order to make a living?
And also in the last few months, there's been an incredible explosion of interest in NFTs. What's your opinion on that? Is that some kind of scam, or is it genuinely a new way of people trading and making money? Is it a new future for people?
Well, I think there's a difference between the and the market of art. So the art market will live always, and there's markets everywhere for anything that has some value. And I think if we only see the market, we are always going to find bubbles and this kind of different differences in prices in between artists or whatever, or people that value more something that it's not social, what has social value and that stuff. So I think the best way, or at least the more thoughtful way, is to just focus on the art And if we are creating art and digital art for a long time, it's very organic and very useful that these tools are being mainstream.
And final question for you, go to the next presentation. So we're here to talk about the metaverse, and we're kind of in the metaverse. It's been a little bit glitchy. I lost my connection for a few minutes. But is this the future? If we're all permanently having to deal with COVID or permanently having to worry about traveling, are we going to be increasingly spending our time in environments like this?
Well,
virtual environments?
You know what? I think I always said that we are in a moment in time, like very particular one, that the friction with in between technology and us is very high. So as soon as we start to erase that friction and we have more advances on technology, we will not have these problems. We are living these problems, not our children and so on.
Yeah, it reminds me of the first few times I tried to use the internet. It was actually a lot worse than this, and now look at us. Thank you very much, Andres. We'll come back to you in a bit. Let's hear now from Space Popular, Lara and Fredrik. I'm not sure which one of you is going to present, but do you want to share your screen and give us your presentation?
Sure. There we go. How does one follow the incredibly beautiful work of Andres? We are today sandwiched in between two people whose work we really, really admire and are always following. But yeah, Fredrik and I run our practice, Space Popular. Am I there? Yeah. And we do stuff like this. We often get asked if these are renders, these are real. So we build buildings, and we also work on interiors. We create furniture such as these and objects. And we also do designs for really big buildings, which we still haven't built any of them, but really hope for. All of them in this slide aim to be physical. And we have also been having the wonderful opportunity to work with many cultural institutions like the RIBA in London, ArcDes in Stockholm, and many different independent galleries and so on to create exhibitions that are more like commentaries on the future, like ideas of the future. We see them as a way to let people try what these worlds feel like, but also then taking the opportunity to immerse them into an idea or a thought or like a mini thesis about what a potential future could look like. And these are often environments that are mixed reality, where there is like a model or a large sculpture, a piece of furniture or prints that that are perfectly matched to that environment. So that's one of the ideas with which we are running, and we will present another one that highly contrasts with that. So you will often see pictures of our work that look like this, where we have people with enormous boxes on their faces. I think Andres has said it so well that at the moment there is a lot of friction, and if there is something that illustrates very well that friction is the moment that you see one of us with this just like gigantic black thing over their faces. Nonetheless, we find it, of course, like incredibly interesting to witness these early stages of the development of these technologies. And yeah, things this event are incredible opportunities to start figuring it out. What does it mean to exist in this medium, and to realize that this has been taking place well before any pandemic? So it's not necessarily like a remedial to the situation, but it has much more to do with something where we might want to be partly for always. Yeah, we have been thinking of this for quite a long time. Early projects, even before any headset of the current generation existed, of this new existed, we were looking into these projects where we were wondering what might it be like to create social spaces really quite similar to what we are experiencing today, but always with a particular interest as architects on how you organize information in space. So these are some examples of that. Yeah.
So the one that we just saw is Cloud Resilience, which is one of our first projects where we're dealing with virtual space. This is a global mortality rate database that we were envisioning that you would be able to access. We can see pandemic being noted there, and this is again 2013, a project that's ongoing. So as Lara said, we're really interested in, also we see here in this project, which is Freestyle, which is an exhibition with the Royal Institute of British Architects with curator Shumi Bose in London, which kind of uses different kind of elements, both VR and printed carpets and models, to bring together complex sets of information over like multiple different mediums. And here is some example of the VR films, and here is also an example of a project we did in 2018 where we're imagining the use of the future of augmented reality being used for heritage sites. These are still excerpts from a video installation that was on show at MMCA in Seoul. We're really interested in also the kind of portals that the virtual opens up. And we're also been sort of speculating on what happens with the home in the age of virtual media in the project Event Room, where we imagine people using VR or AR, and sort of homes start to become overlapped, creating a sort of gigantic global home. And more recently, we've been building a lot of virtual spaces that are social. So here is me and Lara occupying avatars that we designed for a festival that we launched for Fundación Arquia in Spain. And the next slide, you'll see an example of a large crowd gathered, not too dissimilar from where the space you are right now, but this is a three-dimensional space. So we're really interested in increasingly in how the immersive internet can be social. Here's an overview over that project.
Yeah, and the ideas of the metaverse, I think is quite interesting that this is happening, and we're so keen to talk about what are the versions of the metaverse we want to see. What do we think can and cannot be called the metaverse, based on not only dimension it has, but also based on ownership models, all these other dimensions. And yeah, here are just some examples of some of the social platforms that we have been building for particular events using open source stacks. I think we're going to stop it here, if I manage. And thank you everyone very much.
Thank you very much, Lara and Fredrik. So how have things changed in the last year? How much has the pandemic accelerated adoption of metaverse techniques, and how much is this just happening anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have seen with you guys are the perfect example, of someone being thrown into starting to experiment this kind of stuff. I think there has been an acceleration. There has also been a necessary pull towards virtual platforms, which might create some positive experimentation, but also probably some reluctance to it, or like people getting quite tired of it at the moment. We have seen a lot of interest growing out of the necessity in, let's say, in the generation of people who is already working and established. But what we think is really, really exciting is to look at what is happening especially in platforms such as VRChat or Sansar, where you had people who is really building communities within there. And I think that is completely disconnected from the pandemic. It's what was happening anyway. But I think the combination of these two things, of like embracing these kind of platforms that are available to anyone with any device, in parallel to what is happening in VR, social VR platforms, is just going to lead to something really interesting, where we might all meet and find a meeting point very soon, I think.
And final question before we go to Amber. The reason that Dezeen jumped on this opportunity to use this Gather platform is because it's so simple. I mean, you see this little familiar icon walking around, whereas things like VR and putting on a headset, for me personally, have always felt a little bit like, I don't know, I'm cool enough for that, or that's a bit weird. Do you think that the platforms need to change in order to be accepted by large numbers of people?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is very important to make things natural. I think Andrés said also quite interestingly that the environments that he creates have follow certain rules, no, or like certain familiar elements. And I think this is something very interesting to bring into the discussion. Super important that familiarity and a certain architectural skeuomorphism, or whatever we might call it, will be key to in making this transition, bring everyone together in the transition. That's why I think Gather is just an incredible tool. I wish it was open source so that it could be created through metaverse. But I think this in-between platforms will be critical in order to make that transition. Familiarity of physical space, but also the familiarity of the platforms that we have used up until now, like chat, like Zoom, things like this, will be the base of good design.
Like we've lost Amber, but maybe we can go to Charlotte Taylor's presentation.
Hello everyone, my name is Charlotte Taylor. I'm a London-based interior designer, art director, and founder of Maison de Seb. Maison de Seb is a creative studio come agency in which I work collaboratively with a number of talented 3D artists globally under the role of art director and concept designer. Maison came into being as a sort of happy accident, and over the past year with the craze towards digital, it's really taken shape organically and become the cross studio agency that it is today. Although despite this, personal projects still remain a very large part of our focus. Our main themes we work with are imagined homes and interiors, creating spaces that are somewhat rooted in the actual, be it through the furniture, architecture, or referable location, yet have something that gives away its fictional nature, or that it couldn't possibly exist in the real world. As I'm not a qualified architect myself, designing these digital homes has given me the freedom to explore architecture from my own personal understanding, with a limitless scope of opportunity without physical, client, or environmental constraints. Whilst my work is largely a form of play and exploration for me, the growing interest and movement towards the metaverse poses some interesting openings in the field of digital homes and buildings. I'm currently making baby steps into this very new world, and have just made a debut NFT collection in collaboration with Zyver Studio, which treats these architectures as collectibles likened to Pokemon cards or a game. Anthony from Zyver will explain in more detail the collection now. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Antonio Thier. I'm the founder of Zyver Studio, a practice operating between architecture and design. Before going forward, thank you very much, Charlotte, for inviting me to take part of this talk. Today, I'm going to introduce you to a concept we developed together and that we name Arctoys. We love to think Arctoys as the first collectible architectural toys, the visualization and acquisition in NFT of unique architectural concepts. With Arctoys, we wanted to give people the opportunity to collect one-of-a-kind architectural concept. It was also the opportunity to generate something fun, something playful, something contemplative that will enable people to discover unique spaces and aesthetics. The idea was to create a small and precious object that can be exchanged from end to end, like Pokemon cards in the playground, and each Arctoys is titled, numbered, and signed to guarantee its uniqueness. The Arctoys are contained in an aluminum capsule, which is the same size as an AirPod case, and they are made of a nano chip and a mechanical system similar to a watch. This combination has two benefits. It allows at the same time the storage of digital images and data files relating to a fantasy project, but also the rotation of these images on a microRISE system with an additional storage area. I think Charlotte and I are both convinced of the impact of the collective action, and we wish to encourage other designers to appropriate the Arctoys by giving them free access to the original blank file of the capsule. From a business standpoint, We wanted to give them the chance to develop their activities by creating virtual projects that could be shown and seen, but most of all, building references that can be presented to their customers. We hope this extra credibility helps them to obtain a real order. And on the other hand, we wanted mostly created a limitless platform that encourage designers to develop concepts that push the boundaries of the profession. The virtual world make it possible to avoid physical, financial, and administrative constraints. So thinking about the future of architecture has never been so excited. Architecture is transformed into a game, visual and constructive, with which we must have fun.
Thank you very much. And as I said, Charlotte is somewhere in the audience, so maybe we can go and speak to her later on. So sorry, Amber, we lost you virtually briefly then, so we went to Charlotte's presentation. But do you want to start again with your presentation?
Yeah, no, can you hear me now? Or
yeah, perfectly. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, let me see. I will just run through it quickly. So basically, we create digital collections, digital only collections, never ever physical. That's our guiding line. And from there on, we try to reimagine what fashion can be. Physical world was too limiting for me. And as a kid, I also used to game as well. So I was very much used to virtual spaces and virtual identities. So yeah, I felt like fashion school was very physical and always wanted to see how we could change that. So like I said, we work with all kinds of materials that create that defy new ways of working. So yeah, of course, it's very practical to wear this in the physical reality. But in the metaverse, why not? So you can wear internet cable for anything you like. And we also try to defy beauty ideals by, instead of wanting bigger lips or a fuller bum, maybe you would like to have purple skin and orange eyes. We sold this NFT dress. This was the very first digital only garment on the NFT. It sold back then in an auction for $9,500. And this was an outrage everywhere because people really didn't get it. And they were like, how are we going to pay $9,500 for this? And how is it? That's like the emperor's new clothes. What does this mean? Is this the end of reality? So yeah, we had a lot of amazing comments on this. And I think it was sort of painting the future of the fact that we could shift our identity every minute. Like, we're no longer bound to these physical realities where we pick one set of clothes in the morning and you wear this the whole day. Basically, this is really speaking to the imagination of what we could do, because identities every single minute, and you wouldn't have to worry about feeling underdressed or anything, because you could change your looks, and even if it could be more connected to your emotions. So you'd be able to, if you feel angry or anything, you could wear a look that embodies that. So for me, the future of fashion also very much embodies empathy and the fact that we're communicating more with each other. Our files are able to download for free, so we put everything of our collection online for people to download for free. This is some work that has been created by amazing artists that have used our files to create their own visualizations. And this is what I love about digital, is that it can be one big collaboration. And especially within the fashion industry, this is quite rare because a lot of secrecy is held within the industry, while in the 3D industry, everybody shares everything, which to us felt way more natural. And then you can wear our clothes within a virtual world. So this is an example of Sansar, where you're able to wear our garments now from the Deep collection, and we're broadening the portfolio. So we basically call ourselves Wardrobe of the Metaverse, which means that one-stop shop. You come to us and we can dress you for any virtual space. We also did some brand collaboration together with Buffalo Shoes, where we designed a digital-only sneaker. This was also a big outrage because a lot of people didn't believe that they, were paying money for something digital. But we wanted to design a sneaker that was, of course, metaverse-like and had these qualities of things that could never exist in reality. So we always try to push those boundaries. And then the last thing I'll show you is the recent collaboration.
Looks like we lost Amber again there. Never mind. Until she comes back, let's I just ask some questions to all of you, Andrés, Fredrik, and Lara. Amber mentioned then, she said when she sold this dress as an NFT 2 years ago that people were outraged and they felt like, is this the end of reality? I mean, is it the end of reality? Do you think that we will become so embedded in the digital world and our digital selves that reality will become less important?
Well, I think we are not escaping from reality. We are just expanding our consciousness into this digital realm. We most of us we are digitalists since a lot of years. We use digital money. We I don't know. Most of us have used more digital money than physical one, and we don't want to use a piece of something that has some value. It's difficult to share. It's difficult to cut into pieces. You need change. It's just friction. So I think we are not escaping from reality. We are expanding to a new realm that it's open us the possibilities to expand frictionless.
Amber, we lost you again briefly, so I asked the question to the other panelists. You made the comment that when you sold that dress, the first NFT dress 2 years ago, people were outraged and thought, does this mean the end of reality? So I was asking the panelists, is it the end of reality? Are we going to get so absorbed in the digital alternative that reality becomes less interesting, important, or less profitable? What do you think?
Beautiful question. I feel like it will be always a sort of addition. So reality on its own is very beautiful, and we shouldn't want to replace that. However, there's, I think, a lot of new creative avenues that we could do in the digital space that we haven't seen before. So to me, it lies in the sort of fantasy reality and the connection, because we're so interconnected now. Like the fact that I can be with you guys from my living room, even though the connection is a little bit, iffy, I can still talk to you guys. And to me, this feels like a new interconnected web that will create more of a world-centric view rather than an egocentric view. That's sort of how I would see it.
Wow, that's a pretty profound statement. What do you think, Fredrik and Lara?
Yeah, I think we are all really clearly not living in something we can define as one reality. And I really like the ways that Marshall McLuhan, the Canadian philosopher, put it, was saying that we basically cannot use a new medium in a new way. We can only use a new medium in an old way and fill it with old stuff. And that's what we're doing now. And it's hard for us to accept as creators that what we are putting into the virtual spaces now are old things. And according to Marshall McLuhan, like that is not a choice. It's just there is no new things to put in it. It's literally impossible, which means that there's always going to be a shock. And McLuhan has this beautiful way of saying that, like, we cannot actually see the new media that we use because we don't know how to read it. So I think in that sense, like we're already, like, all of the past steps of media that we're already gone past, all the way from the first mass media object, the book, all the way through photography and cinema and TV. We're already left sort of reality behind, but it's always like the moment when something new comes in, we look back at our past reality as somehow the original reality, which is obviously not. So I think it's inevitable. And since we are we work a lot with VR as it is now, and that's, we always talk about it as like the fax machine age. Like we are so incredibly sort of early, and it's not going to happen next year, or maybe in the next 10, or maybe not even in the next 20 years. And then every year we're going to have this moment when we stop and ask ourselves, like, are we leaving reality behind? And yes, we are. Yeah, the previous one, and we're building a new one.
Yes, and your point about there being nothing new, and that's kind of brought to life by the fact that we're all video chatting as ourselves, but walking around with little avatars that are like arcade games from 30 years ago.
Exactly.
It's humans and a 30-year-old 8-bit model of an avatar.
Yeah, but impossible. Like 104 people right now in the same room, all of them with audio and video capabilities. All of these things being put together were absolutely impossible before, right? So.
No, that's true, and that was going to be my next question. Like in the year since I spoke to you, Fredrik and Lara, where you said incredible things are happening in VR, and I think my first experiences of VR were with Arthur Mamumani flying. I had this weird like tube-like avatar that was flying over Burning Man, and it was quite crude. And then you guys did an architecture conference in the autumn, but now here we are, like you said, 100 people, all friends. Gathered in this space. Like, what will happen in the next year? We've seen the explosion of NFTs in the last few weeks. What are the technologies? What are the environments that might be coming next, do you think?
Definitely one thing that will be exciting, that will be happening, is to Amber's work, and just generally the idea of sort of our presence in virtual spaces. I think it really exciting, this concept of homuncular flexibility, which was an idea launched by Jeremy Bielsen and Jaron Lanier. The fact that the human mind is very good at adopting new ways of inhabiting different bodies. Like in VR, if you have a tail, for instance, it takes only a few minutes before your body gets used to having a tail, which means that you'll very, very soon get ready to having another arm, and then all sorts of other body-related things, but also being able to control or actually extend your body into architecture. That's like one of our biggest kind of predictions of what's going to happen in the next 20 years or so. But it's already beginning to happen, where like architecture, fashion, or clothing and the body sort of becomes one. So one thing is like for this phase where we're just like the amazement of being able to be in the same room virtually in this way, or through VR chat or any of these things. The next step will be really start to challenge the way that we occupy a body at all. I think it's going to be something that we're working on, and something we're really excited to see moving forward.
And that is maybe a bit more long-term. Short-term, more of this, more awkwardness coming your way, and love it or hate it. If you are not a part of it, then you'll be late. I think so.
And just picking up on what you said there, Fredrik, I mean, that architecture and the body will become one, but do we even need architecture in alternative digital realities? Because we don't need, there's no rain to keep out, there's no wind, privacy can be created digitally. You don't need partitions to do that. Will there even be a need for architecture?
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay, Marcus?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the necessity for setting the environment, and again, I keep referring, being very meta, to the event itself, the necessity for codes, the necessity for atmosphere. I think virtual environments, what they are doing is that they are bringing to the forefront of architectural design the really critical thinking about what is architecture doing semiotically. What is it doing as a true language, not the architectural language that only architects speak, not the postmodern architectural language, but the architectural language of Pinterest, the architectural language of social media, of like, you look at a bunch of Andres's images and you read something, you start to understand a relationship in between them and an atmosphere that goes across, right? And that is basically architecture as the spoken word. Basically architecture speaking directly to you. And even if we take it to simpler things, like there being chairs, there being a stage and a non-stage, there being a table to gather around, you very clearly start understanding that what these things are doing is not just allowing us to sit or protecting us from the weather, but they are also saying a lot. So routines that we have built in the physical will be our library to build the virtual. And eventually we might start developing new ones, but I think fully embracing a new reading, or like a more careful reading of the things that architecture and furniture and design is telling us today, is really the design practice in the virtual realm in the foreseeable future.
What about you, Amber? What do you think of where will we be in a year's time? What is coming that's going to be the new thing that shocks everyone?
Oh, this is again such a beautiful question. I hope, because I think the way we look at clothes now, it's in a way the way we look at identity in general is still very much tied to physical reality. But what if suddenly I would be able to wear a dress that would extend as far as someone that would walk around me, and then suddenly my dress would connect to your dress, and there would be some kind of social interaction? Or, what if we can really construct like the sort of emotional experience of wearing clothes or showing yourself in this whole new way? Like for me, identity is fluid, and I feel like that fluidity of identity something that can really create these new ways of looking at each other and new ways of relating to each other. So for me, like a big word of the future is empathy. So I really hope that these kind of virtual spaces will allow for more connection with each other, but also more interaction and close. They can be this narrative that you wear around yourself. So it does not have to be necessarily a physical fabric, but it can be something that you wear around yourself, and the boundaries of yourself are actually dissolving. And I feel like for me, that is a very interesting part. Like, where does my physical body and where does the digital body begin, and how do I relate to my digital self? Is it me? Even choosing your little avatar here in this space, like, already did a lot, right? You had to sort of like pick what fits you best and sort of represents you. But if it doesn't, you can feel not at home. Like if you would, for instance, wear the clothes of your friend, you don't feel like yourself. So like, what is that even? And I feel like that identity is going to be a big exploration of the future, like what identity means. And I think within a year's time, identity will have a completely different meaning from now.
It's interesting that none of us particularly dressed up for tonight, isn't it?
Exactly. I wanted to wear a Snapchat filter, but in the end, I think this is something that still has to come about. Like, I want to create my own at some point. I think that would be really nice.
And Gather definitely needs some help with its avatars, because there's a little bit of choice, but it's like you can have blue or red or yellow.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very limited.
And finally, before we go to audience questions, Andres, what about you? What's around the corner? What's going to blow our minds?
Well, I think that's very difficult to know, but what I really think that it's already happening is that people will be accepted to places because of what they hold in their wallets.
What do you mean by that?
By crypto wallets, like not the amount of money, but what assets do you hold in your wallet will be more important than who you are and how much money do you have.
So it'd be like a kind of like an ID card, like a privilege card almost.
Yeah. It will be so difficult to own some assets because of the scarcity of each, that even of having a lot of money, you will not be able to own it. So it will be quite a thing, what you own in your wallet.
So that kind of ushers in a potential era of digital elitism of some kind then, does it? How will you become part of the elite then if it's not through the amount of money you have?
Well, there are many ways. Not having money and owning very important pieces or very important assets in the right moment. You can it could be because of time, because you own it in like very very early stages, or it could be because of an airdrop or some projects that are gifts. Actually, you can participate on something and own a piece that will be valued in $1 million, and you receive it just a gift. So there are a lot of opportunities and are not on the streets of Milan.
Speaking of Milan, I mean, it's not certain whether Milan's going to happen this year, but will we still need physical get-togethers like Milan, or even just meeting in the pub? I mean, do you think this kind of gathering is ever going to replace physical meetings?
No, at all. Not at all. Not at all. I think that's the first thing everyone think of this, and I always try to make an underline on this. We are not escaping from the physical world, at least anytime soon. So we need to create links and bridges and create assets that can be valuable in both worlds. We can't just jump on digital and have some troubles with connection.
Quickly, Amber, Fredrik, and Lara, do you agree? Does meeting up in the real world still have some benefits over this kind of thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think it has benefits, but for me, like the virtual world and the real world. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I feel like the virtual world and the real world will integrate. So, like right now, we're looking at screens, which is extremely limiting. But if we look at what's happening in spatial computing and in all the developments that are happening in AR glasses and AR lenses, I see that the future holds this beautiful layer on top of the physical reality that you can turn on and off, that you can be a part of or not. And for me, like that really sketches a outlook of where we can use the digital space for anything that we need, like our phones right now are an extension of ourselves, right? So how that will translate, we cannot go without phones anymore. Like I tried it for a week at a festival. It was fantastic, like amazing, but I do feel like, you know, for any type of use in a modern city, you need a sort of a phone. You can do it without, but you know, it's just way more difficult. So I feel like the digital world adds a lot of very beautiful things to our lives. But I do feel like these two worlds will integrate more. So there will be like a virtual layer on top of reality that you'll be able to switch on and off. And then of course there will be virtual worlds that you can go into. But I think it will be a combination of all of these. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I think that one has to think about the virtual as not only digital in order to understand this context, because certainly like sending a text message or even writing a letter is not real in this sense, right? You're actually interacting, but you're not touching. So I think we need to position the question like, what is the role of bringing physical biological bodies together? Touching or being actually, and that, you know, we haven't seen any form of media in history that has stopped that interest. And I think to some degree, all forms of media is really aiming to try and either recreate that or bring that as closely as possible. And until the moment we can do that, which may be in the next 50 years or so, for sure, all of these things are just appendixes to the urge of actually being face-to-face or physically with someone else.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So we'll have a little bit of time for audience questions. Now, how this is going to work is that if you're in the audience, you have a question, please raise your hand by clicking on the smiley icon at the bottom of the screen and then selecting the raised hand thing. And then I will highlight you and ask you to ask your question. Fredrik, you're asking a question?
I'm just demonstrating what it looks like.
Cool. Okay, so we have, and then keep your hand up so I have time to identify you. Does anyone else? Okay, Donica Lakmani. I'm going to you, Donica. If I spotlight you, Donica, to ask your question now. Donica?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I've just turned off my camera. It's easier to hear everybody. My question is, well, first of all, thank you for everybody's presentation. Everything is so inspiring. My question is, what do you think makes the digital objects or wardrobes or architecture more valuable and expensive than the ones in real life? Like, for example, Andrés, you said the chair sold for a lot more, or, you know, Amber, your garment. So what what establishes this complete different reality and price as well for that kind of business model?
I guess that's to you, Andres, to start with.
I was trying to skip it. Well, now it's not hard to answer. Digital has quite a few qualities that are verifiable, scarcity, traceability. It's very easy to trace assets, where they are, how many of them, who they have them, where, and also they don't age.
Does that answer your question, Danica? Does anyone else want to chip in with a bit more on that one?
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I think the use of materials that cannot exist in real life are also something that can make it more valuable. So if you have some kind of very beautiful animation or something that maybe even reacts to a certain type of data. So imagine like a virtual dress reacting to a live data set, or a virtual dress changing to according to the moon cycle, for instance, or a virtual dress that instead of deteriorating over time, it's actually regenerates over time. So you start with a rag, and then over time it becomes like a really beautiful couture piece. Like all of these things are possible in virtual space. So it could mean that there is a lot of worth for these type of ways of experiencing clothes or objects.
Thank you. And Lara and Fredrik, have you come across selling architecture in the virtual space?
Yeah, it does happen. Dezeen has been publishing some quite interesting stories of that happening, but it's not something that we are engaged with, and for a variety of reasons, we're really interested in following all of this. And I think also part of your question is like, why is the value so extreme at the moment? I think what Andres was bringing up, just scarcity generally in a product that has real financial value, and the reasons why that financial value exists. I mean, it is extremely new now. I mean, many people would say even Beeple, who is the third most selling artist in human history, said outright in the first Clubhouse launch that it's a bubble, and it's certainly. I also think that it's a bubble, but after that bubble is gone, then the really good stuff, like Andres and Amber stuff, and other really truly amazing artists or other creators, will then find themselves in a market to actually value art, or whatever it happens to be, because obviously NFTs and blockchains will be attached to things that are also not art. In virtual space, very, very soon, there will be connections between like just simple your room, a specific token linked to different objects, your normal table, and that you use that is not valuable to anyone else. So at the moment, we're seeing like a kind of a real big hype, sort of early golden age, and it's difficult to say what's going to happen afterwards. But again, Andres and Amber's work will for sure live on being valued, because it's just amazing stuff.
Great, thank you. Herbert Wright, do you want to ask a question?
Oh, hi, yeah. Can everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love how people are surprised when the technology works.
I know, it's totally amazing. It was very interesting to hear Amber talking about selling that beautiful dress design as an NFT, and Andres is talking about a future where, one's wealth is what's in one's wallet. Fredrik's talking about blockchains getting everywhere. There is now waking up to the fact that there is a big connection between the virtual world and the real world, specifically in terms of blockchain, and it's an environmental cost that is huge. I just read today that Bitcoin mining, it's just one thing that's going on in this. This is research done at Beijing University, is going to be by the year 2024 on current trends, burning the energy of a country the size of Italy.
I think we got the gist of your question. Can I hand that over to the
address
panel?
this issue? And I'd like to hear what the comments are from Amber and Fredrik.
Andres has got his hand up there, so maybe he'd like to take this one first.
Yes, of course. I think it's totally right. I always try to explain this from a historical perspective. We prefer to use the carbon train because it's useful at the moment it has been created. Of course, it was very bad for our planet and for us and for everyone. But then we started to create better solutions and contemporary solutions. We have better trains, and we are trying to do the same with the blockchain. Something that is very important is that calculating the carbon footprint based on transaction count fundamentally misunderstands how Ethereum works. The blocks happen regardless of your transaction count. An ecological impact that NFTs processes generate is insignificant compared to the damage that the current banking system is causing to the environment. So every argument on this is based on superficial perception of the way those processes are operating. So if I can clear this up, the blockchain works regardless the mining, the minting, the way that we are uploading art on the blockchain. So it will be the same on zero transactions than full transactions, because the blockchain will work. And another thing is that we are transitioning from proof of work almost in all of the blockchain to proof of stake. Nifty Getaway, it's the platform that it's the biggest one and has the most bigger audience. They have migrated to proof of stake, I think, a couple of weeks ago. So that's very good. And I think it's very bad to see this without context. We are always trying to create better things, but we are using the things that we already have until we have better things.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to go to the next question now.
Thank you to the panelists. You guys all produced beautiful work. It was quite stunning to look through it all. My question is, do you feel that the idea of the metaverse is just a step ahead? So I think maybe my question is the confusion coming on the feasibility of it all around the fact that there's not an intermediate technology that will help us utilize those assets in almost a blend? So I'm thinking almost augmented reality, like something where those assets become part of the real world, but not truly. So we're seeing, digital buildings pop up in a city once you put on glasses or something, just thinking sci-fi. But do you think that that'll help bridge people's mental gap on cost and feasibility and aspects that seem a stretch right now?
Who's that question directed to?
Anyone that wants to.
Does anyone want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you are seeing right now is already one of these blended versions. I think the topics that are coming up deserve a deeply technical conversation and deeply technical presentations, different than the ones we gave today, which would be super interesting and very relevant to have, actually. But yes, I think we are already seeing that blend. We will see more and more of that in the form of pixel streaming, in the form of all kinds of basically you not having to have such a powerful device, but run really powerful or like really heavy worlds. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing more and more of technically.
Cool. Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to chip in with an answer to that? Otherwise, I'll go back to Bo.
I think we're already in it. Like I feel like we've been in it like for the since the time we've had internet. Like there has been a metaverse. So right now, I feel like it's taking more shape. But we've all had our Instagram accounts, Facebook account, like all these kind of things. So in a way, like we're already in it for quite a long time. Now it's just taking, instead of 2D images, it will transition to 3D more and more. So I would want to add that to it.
Yeah, and maybe just adding to what Amber said, I think it's not only 3D, but it's also synchrony, more and more synchrony. I think the internet was a relatively lonely place, and it's becoming more and more of a place where you actually find people, encounter people without having to necessarily make an appointment to them. And I think current social media is so asynchronous, to use the common term, that I'm not sure that I would say that there is like social, well, anyway, that would be a long conversation. Yeah, that's the point.
Okay, and Bo, I couldn't hear you before, but everyone else could. So
okay,
can you hear me now, Bo?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Marcus? Hello?
I can hear you. I can hear Bo.
The NFTs as a way of monitoring, is this going to be a bubble that bursts, or is this like a new way of having basically patents on your designs? Is there a way of protecting you, or is the NFT thing going to fall apart after the bubble bursts, and there'll be a different way of controlling your content online?
Is he asking a question?
Yeah, he has finished. Yeah, I think Bo was asking a question about NFT that maybe I think again Amber or Andrés would be. Maybe Amber could chip in here.
Yeah, sure. So for me, I think NFTs are something that is going to stay, because finally you're able to trace where the image is coming from, where the artwork is coming from, where everything is coming from, where it has been, what artist has created it, and it's really about this interconnectivity. And because of the decentral nature of the network, we're going to see power structures from these big corporations land into decentralized organizations, and this will shift society. So for me, the NFT period has been one of the most interesting things that have happened in my life. Like I feel like we're really on the verge of this new way of being in society, where we have a decentralized nature in entire society. So it's going, the power dynamics are going to shift, which to me goes more into collaboration, and especially because you can trace where things come from, you can see the transactions, it's open source, there's no more secrets, it's all out in the open. And of course, this is very philanthropic, but for me, like, I feel like this will really resonate with the future, and it's here to stay. And we're building our platform on it as well. Like, I think it's definitely here to stay, but maybe others want to add to that as well.
Any final comment from any of the panelists?
I think Amber put it very well. I was going to say something similar, but she's speaking perfect.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you all so much. It was problematic at times, but largely a great discussion. Technology just about held itself together. We're going to finish the auditorium session now with a performance by Katarina Kovalenko of KKQ. And let's listen to that. That'll be about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll finish off the evening in the virtual bar Basso. And hopefully Maurizio, the barman from Bar Basso in Milan, is back in the room. He was having trouble connecting as well earlier. Otherwise, we'll just have to go and raid the bar in his absence. Thank you very much to all of our panelists, and hopefully here comes Katarina.